And one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride-in on this Wednesday morning from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. A couple accidents to report, one at Hardscrabble and Summit Parkway, one at Methodist Road and Highway 1, St. Peter's Church Road and Highway 76, as well as Forest Drive and Gregg Street. Today, a little bit cooler, high of 88, cloudy with a chance of thunderstorms later on this afternoon. Tomorrow, cloudy with high of 92, and your 4th of July looking bright and sunny with a high of 94. That's your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on the Early Game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head along with you. This is how you get me fired up. A little Cults of Personality to kick things off. Heck yeah. We're off and rolling on this Wednesday morning. 60 days until kickoff for South Carolina football. I appreciate good whole round numbers. And 60, we're getting closer. That's right at 2 months. Don't think about it in the context of that 60 days seems shorter than 2 months for some reason. I also brought this up yesterday. If you really think about it, technically you can say when we're in the month of July, there's football next month because South Carolina plays on August 31st. So we are only one actual month removed from Carolina teeing off. And really, when you think about it, there is football later this month. The NFL Hall of Fame game coming up on July 31st with the Chargers and the Lions. So don't worry. It's right around the corner. It's coming. It's coming quickly. And hopefully we're going to have a fun season to talk about. As we roll through the offseason, as we've been doing really since the season ending, a lot of projections, a lot of things, a lot of people talking about South Carolina, and for good reason. They were an exciting team last year. They were one of the better stories in college football for the way they finished the season and obviously just missed out on making what would have been their first ever college football playoff appearance. People are buzzing. People are talking about this team. People are talking about Lenore Sellers. People are talking about Dylan Stewart. People are talking about Shane Beamer, and that's good. People care about this team. People want to talk about this team, and we will take that because guess what? That gives us things to talk about here on the radio station to preview what's hopefully going to be a very, very fun season for South Carolina. And when it comes to projections, there's none I love more than a good poll projection, and we've got a new set of them, which I'll hit right after this. It is the 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. As I mentioned, I love bowl projections. I will read a bowl projection in the middle of February. I'll read one in the middle of July. I'll read one in the middle of October. I don't know what my fascination is with projections, and I just love bowls in general, I guess. But it's always interesting to kind of chart progress, right? Because like a year ago, when we went through the summer, we're kind of hard-pressed to find a bowl projection that actually had South Carolina in it. I remember maybe one or two had them like the Birmingham Bowl, which is essentially saying, hey, we think you'll get to 6 wins, but not much more. Maybe there was like one other one out there, but for the most part, we navigated the summer without a whole lot of bowl projections to talk about when it came to South Carolina. Much different story this time. In fact, when you look at bowl projections this time around, the question becomes of, okay, do they have South Carolina in the playoff, or are they playing in just a really good bowl game? Because, again, what you did a year ago kind of sets the table for what the expectations the following year are. Now, should that always be the case? Not necessarily, because especially in today's world of college football, so much changes year to year. It's impossible to know what a team's truly going to be like until we start seeing games being played. But nevertheless, bowl projections are fun because it's just interesting to see what certain people or certain entities when it comes to sports media think about this South Carolina team. Over the past week or so, we've hit a couple of the major ones that have already been put out there. Both Athlon and CBS Sports projected South Carolina to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl, which is, of course, the former Outback Bowl down there in Tampa Bay, which I think a lot of people would view as maybe like half a step down from the Citrus Bowl a year ago. And in today's world of college football, with all of the New Year's Six, the prestigious bowl games being tied into the college football playoff, really, I mean, the Citrus Bowl is about the best you can do outside of that. So Carolina kind of had the distinction of playing in what was thought of the second most, in terms of the second tier of bowl games, the most prestigious of those, playing in the Citrus Bowl, where, of course, they came up short to Illinois. ReliaQuest probably about half a step below that, and they don't do it this way anymore. It's really kind of based on matchup and team attractiveness and all that kind of stuff. But in the old days, during the BCS format, there was a pecking order. Right? So after a SEC team inevitably played in the national championship, and the second highest team ranked in the BCS was selected for a BCS bowl, usually the Sugar Bowl, then it went through the different levels of bowls after that. Citrus Bowl was number one, and then at the time Outback Bowl was number two. So I'd kind of consider that to be the second tier or the second level when it comes to non-playoff bowl games. And basically, when you kind of look at the records of SEC teams playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl, it means you're around 8 or 9 wins. And I brought this up last week when we talked about these projections. If you can guarantee me right now South Carolina has an 8-4 regular season, I'd take that. Given everything you lost, given all the talent that's gone on to the NFL, if you can guarantee me 8 wins for the Gamecocks, I'd take that in a heartbeat. Because there's so much uncertainty. Again, we've talked about it. Like your ceiling and floor is pretty wide here. You could be as good as like 10-2. You could be as worse as like 6-6, maybe 5-7, if we're being completely honest. So if you can kind of meet me in the middle there and say, yeah, I'll promise you they'll win 8 games, I take it. Again, I think a lot of people would see that as a disappointment, given how close you came to the playoff a year ago, that you would not be making it in this time. But when you look at the grand scope of things, when you look at all that you've lost, guaranteeing me 8 wins, guaranteeing you, Gamecock fan, 8 wins, I think a lot of people would take that. I don't know how many people would take this next prediction, though. Brett McMurphy, who, by the way, congratulations to him, now is now part of the On3 network. We'll cover them for them as an insider. Yesterday, as he was announcing his self being in addition to that crew, put out his first bowl projections when it came to his time at On3. South Carolina is projected to be in the Liberty Bowl this upcoming season. Which, when you kind of look at the record of teams that make the Liberty Bowl, means you're probably going to be a 6 or 7 win team. So you either go 6-6 or 7-5. I think that kind of straddles the line of what people would find acceptable in terms of expectations for this year. Of course, everybody wants to make the playoff, and if they do, that'd be phenomenal. And I'd love that because that would give us tons of great things to talk about, and that would extend the season on into December and all that. But if you don't get there, again, I think 8 to 9 wins, very acceptable. 6-7 wins, a step back, but at least you're in a bowl game. It's better than not making a bowl game. So there is that, caveat to it. But I think when you look at the program as a whole, right? And every program loses talent. A lot of the better programs lose talent to the NFL at a high clip every single year, like South Carolina just did last year, all those guys obviously being on defense. Good programs are supposed to be able to reload and go out there and be just as good, if not better, than the year prior. So I think a lot of people, I told you right now, hey, I'm going to lock you in and say it's a 6-6 season, you're going to play in the Liberty Bowl. And again, the result of the bowl game doesn't matter as much as it used to. So we're just kind of focusing on the regular season here. I think the vast majority of people will say, well, that's disappointing because I expected more out of this team, even given all they lost. When you're a team that's supposed to be competing towards the top of college football, and again, Carolina's not ascended that high level yet, but again, when you're on the edge of the playoff, that means you are at least flirting with the possibility of getting there one day, jumping down or falling down to like a 6-6 season would be disappointing, especially assuming Lenore Sellers is healthy the entire season, especially considering the fact that you're playing with, in his second year, what might be, talent-wise, the best quarterback that this program's ever seen. We've never gone into a season with a quarterback that was a shortlist Heisman favorite, projected to be a first-round pick, maybe even the first overall pick. Who knows? This has never happened before. Even when Spencer Rattler came in, and again, he had gone into the prior season in Oklahoma as like the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman, but he did get benched. He did get replaced by Caleb Williams. And, there was hype, but it wasn't through-the-roof hype like I feel like we're getting with Lenore Sellers as of right now. And if that would be kind of one of those great what-ifs, right? Or the great regrets if you're a South Carolina fan. If in 2 years with Lenore Sellers you had 1 9-win season and you missed the playoffs, and then you backed it up with a 6-win season and went to the Liberty Bowl. Again, better than not bowling, but you probably spend a lot of years wondering, like, man, if only we had this, and this around Sellers in that second year, we could have done so much more, right? And again, the record is not necessarily indicative of what Lenore Sellers himself is going to be. Look at Jaden Daniels a couple years ago at LSU. Won the Heisman Trophy, but the defense couldn't stop anybody to save their lives, and that LSU team came nowhere near the college football playoff. So you can be a great individual player, but if the talent around you is not stepping up to the way that they need to, you can still have a below expectations type of season. So we'll see. I do think, again, when you are a team that is flirting with the idea of being in the college football playoff like you were a year ago, you start to enter that realm where you can look at certain bowl games and say, yeah, that's not good enough. And look, for the longest time, South Carolina was a program that was dying to get to a bowl game. Just get to a bowl game, let alone win one. And again, when Steve Spurrier got here, that turned into a regular thing. And then, followed that. Again, the must-chip years are obviously up and down, but some good bowl games there. And Beamer, outside of 2023, has consistently gotten you to bowl games. So I feel like now you're at the point, as a Carolina fan, where you're going to look at certain bowl games and say, that's not acceptable. Yes, getting to a bowl game is kind of priority number one out of all of them, right? In the season, get to 6 wins, so you're at least playing a 13th game somewhere in the month of December, more likely than not. But I think, especially off the heels of last season, you can look at a projection for the Liberty Bowl, which again means you're going to win 6 or 7 games, and say, yeah, that's not good enough. I think you're to the point right now as a program where you can say, okay, we have a line of what's acceptable and what's not when it comes to postseason play, and a Liberty Bowl for the talent that you think you have on this team is not going to be the case with that. So we'll see. And again, I love bowl projections because it gives you the ability to see how the perception changes, right? Carolina didn't start popping up in people's bowl projections until like halfway through the year, right? When people started taking them seriously, and it's like, oh man, could this team make the playoff? Could this team go to the Citrus Bowl? Could this team go to the Reliant Quest Bowl? And all this kind of stuff. So these are kind of the starting points. So again, I'm going to follow how McMurphy views this team as the season goes along, and as his bowl projections continue to change. At what point does he view like, hey, maybe this team is better than go to the Liberty Bowl. Maybe this team can be a playoff team. Maybe this team can go back to a Citrus Bowl or a Reliant Quest Bowl. Like, again, it's kind of a benchmark, kind of set the expectations of where this team is going to be, and it's interesting to reflect back on these at the end of the year and see who was right, who was wrong, and maybe who was kind of in between on that. So, again, a couple bowl projections out there already, a couple for Reliant Quest, and then Brett McMurphy of the On3 Network now expecting them in the Liberty Bowl coming up on January the 2nd. So I started off the show with this, kind of talking about bowls and expectations, because every fan wants to see their team run the table, win every single game, win every trophy in the process, and win the national championship. What are you, as a Gamecock fan, willing to sacrifice to see that happen? Serious question. Stay tuned, because on the other side, we're going to really dive into this. I'm going to propose to you a lot of options. You're going to have a currency, so to speak, on how to spend to get these options, but choose wisely, because it is going to cost you some other things. We're going to have that coming up next. What are you willing to sacrifice to see South Carolina football be successful / maybe win a national championship? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. It's our head along with you, hanging out on your Wednesday on the game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I was driving the other day on I-20, and I saw a Canty Foundation Specialist truck passing me on the other side. And I thought to myself, they're probably going to help somebody with their foundation or crawl space. And given the fact that we've had a lot of rain here recently in the Midlands, probably that crawl space issue, because if you have an open crawl space under your home and recently experienced a storm, you might have some standing water under there. Standing water in your crawl space can lead to a number of issues like mold, mildew, pests like termites can get into your home. It can even affect the air that you breathe, because about half the air that you breathe in your home comes from your crawl space. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com, and they'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation and crawl space needs and get them fixed so you and your family can live with that aura going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on The Game, talking 2025 South Carolina Gamecocks. Mentioned bowl projections there in the last segment. We ran a poll on our Twitter page at 1075 The Game the other day, and the question was, what's your expectation level going into 2025 for the Gamecocks? College football playoff or bust? At least 8 wins, 500 or better, or zero clue. At least 8 wins, won at a whopping 60.2%. College football playoff or bust came in second at 29.7%. So people setting pretty high goals for South Carolina football this upcoming season. And again, rightfully so. When you come off the heels of a 9-win campaign and just missing out on the college football playoff, you want to be able to back that up with a season just as good, if not better, the year prior. Well, this is where you, Mr. or Mrs. diehard Gamecock fan that are listening, get to yield all the power, because I'm going to allow you to choose the outcome for South Carolina football this year, but it's going to cost you. Here's what I mean by this. Everybody wants to see a national championship for South Carolina football. If you're a diehard Gamecock fan, you've probably wanted that your entire life. Hasn't happened. You have had other sports, though, team sports, that is, that have won national championships. And I'm not disrespecting the outdoor track and field championship from 2002, but I'm going to limit this to the 2 baseball national championships and the 3 women's basketball national championships that have all occurred in the past 15 years. We're going to use those as currency. So each level of this is going to cost you 1 more national championship. But, again, you get to pick the outcomes. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I want to get what you would choose. At 803-404-6100, that is the number for the Firehouse Ups text line. And then when we hit the commercial break coming up here in a few minutes, you can also give me a call if you want to at 803-404-6100 as well and get in on the phone line. Because I want to know what you would choose. If I'm giving you the power to choose the outcome for this season, how far are you willing to go and what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Here's the scenario. So the 5 national championships operate just like tokens. So each level is going to cost you 1 more national championship than the thing for it. But with each level, you get all the things that come prior. Here's what I mean by this. Option number 1, it's going to cost you 1 national championship. So you can pick one of the women's basketball titles or one of the baseball titles, but you are going to give that up in exchange for a 12-0 regular season. So that means you go through your schedule unscathed, you beat Clemson, you beat Alabama, beat LSU, all those teams, not a single blemish on your resume. That also means, guess what? You're going to go to the SEC championship game. That costs you 1 national championship from the other sports. Option number 2, going to cost you 2 national championships. You get your 12-0 regular season, and you win the SEC championship. So you get a nice, bright, shiny trophy in the trophy case that you've never had before from the SEC championship game in Atlanta. You get the experience of going there, having a great weekend in early December in Atlanta, the whole 9 yards. That's 2 national championships. Option number 3, 12-0 regular season. You win the SEC championship, and Lenore Sellers wins the Heisman Trophy. Second Heisman Trophy winner in school history, another trophy to add to the trophy case, another tool for recruiting, the whole 9 yards. That's going to cost you 3 national championships. So effectively, with that, you wipe out all of the national championships that Dawn Staley has won. Option number 4, 12-0, SEC championship. Lenore Sellers wins the Heisman Trophy, and you make it all the way to the national championship game. So a season unlike any other in South Carolina history. You're playing on the final night of the 2025 college football season for all the glory. 4 national championships is what that's going to cost you. And finally, you can probably see where this is going. All 5 of those national championships, 2 between baseball and 3 between women's basketball, is going to get you a 12-0 regular season, an SEC championship, a Heisman Trophy win for Lenore Sellers, and you are the 2025 college football playoff national champions. Would you sacrifice all 5 of those prior national championships from other sports to get that one moment of glory, one great season out of South Carolina football? And again, in this hypothetical scenario, I'm doing the little Men in Black mind eraser thing where you have no memory of what Dawn Staley's teams did, what Ray Tanner's teams did. Those trophies are gone. The memories are gone. No pictures from the parade, any of that. Are you willing to erase all of that to see football ascend to the top of college football for just 1 year? 803-404-6100. Let me know your thoughts. I ask this because in the revenue sharing era, there's a give and take. As I mentioned many times, it is great that South Carolina is good at a lot of sports. Football is good. Women's basketball is elite. Baseball has been very good in the past. Obviously not right now. But there's a high level of care for those other sports. And this is something that really surprised me. Not surprised me, but I came to learn when I started doing this job a couple years ago just how much people love men's basketball here. It wasn't the same at Georgia. At Georgia, people watch men's basketball, but it wasn't a big thing. It's a huge thing here. So there's a high level of care for that program as well. And in the era of revenue sharing, and Jeremiah Donati, when he was on with Jay and Elijah a couple weeks ago on the postgame show, would not say what exactly the splits were going to be when it came to revenue sharing in terms of this percentage for this sport, this percentage for this sport, this percentage for this sport. But we know, as with every school, football is going to take up the majority of that pie. But how much are you willing to give to your other sports? Again, when you got the best women's basketball program in the entire country, you got to give them some. You want baseball to get back to its glory days, got to give them some. Men's basketball trying to turn things around, got to give them some. Are you willing to take a little bit away from football to do that, though? And again, this comes to the infighting with coaches, too. Everybody's kumbaya right now, saying, yeah, we're good with this. But in a couple years' time, and I'm not saying this specifically for South Carolina, but at other schools as well, you know, when the men's basketball coach looks at a football program that's going 5-7 every single year, saying, hey, wait a minute, these guys are struggling. I need some more of that money to make my men's basketball program better. Those kind of things are coming. Those kind of conversations are coming. How do you divvy it up? How do you divide the pie where everybody's satisfied and you're getting enough resources to all your sports to make them as successful as possible? Yes, NIL is still going to be a thing on top of that, so that's a different level of discussion here. But the main point being, and the main reason why I'm asking this question and giving you the power as Mr. or Mrs. Gamecock superfan to decide the fate of the 2025 college football team, because you might have to pull some stuff from the other sports to do it. So if I'm putting all 5 of those national championships between baseball and women's basketball on the table, and you can spend all of them to get to that height of glory of winning the national championship, are you willing to do it? Because again, in a sense, you might have to do those kind of things if you want to achieve the ultimate prize in this new era of college football, or college sports in general, quite frankly. Again, we don't know all the specifics of it right now because we're 2 days into it, not even 2 days. We are 36 hours, not even into the revenue sharing era, and we haven't even started playing games yet. That'll come in again another 60 days. So there's so many unintended consequences and unknown things about it as of right now. But again, this harmonious relationship between all the sports, I think, is something that will be testy as time goes on, right? Because again, hey, why are you giving all this money to this sport? We need more over here. No, we need more over here. It's going to be a back and forth, a yin and yang, a tug of war, I feel like, for a lot of schools in terms of how you divvy up these funds, which sports need more, which sports need less. And props to Jeremiah Donati and all the athletic directors out there that are going to be in charge of deciding this every single year and trying to keep everybody satisfied all at the same time. So again, 803-404-6100. I laid out scenarios for you. I want to know your thoughts. What are you willing to spend to see success for South Carolina football? I asked Preston about this earlier on the early game during a commercial break. I laid out the scenarios of, you know, what each national championship would get you in terms of cost. He says, give me 2. So spend 2 national championships, go 12-0 and win the SEC championship. That's good enough for him. Because, again, you have a amount of success that South Carolina football's never seen, and you still get to hold on to the glory of 3 more national championships between, you know, your other sports up to that point. But he spends 2 of them to get to that point, and he said after that he's good. Are you willing to go all in? Are you willing to sacrifice all those national championships for the overall glory of being the best in college football? Ball's in your court. 803-404-6100. That is the Firehouse Subs text line as well as the phone line if you want to get involved with the show. It is the Extra Point. Get some of your thoughts as the show goes along as we continue on here. Tyler Head along with you, flying solo on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. I'll head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Programming note, today is the last day until we shuffle the deck here on The Game. Coming up Monday, the early game is going to sound different. It will be Elijah Campbell jumping in with Preston Thorne as well as Jen Jensen. 9 to noon is going to stay the same. Me and Jack from 9 to 10. Wes and Chris from 11 to 12. And then 12 to 3 for the halftime show. Myself and Bill Gunter will now be with you for your afternoon, your lunchtime, your drive home, whatever it may be. And then Jay and Terry reuniting for the postgame show from 3 until 6. So that's going to be our new lineup starting on July the 7th, which is Monday. We'll be off tomorrow as well as Friday for the 4th of July. So look forward to that. Look forward to work with Bill. Should be a fun time. Got a lot of new ideas and new things cooked up from 12 to 3 that I'm certainly looking forward to diving into and getting things rolling with Bill. Again, I posed the question in the last segment, how much are you willing to give up to see South Carolina win a national championship or have a lot of success this year? Again, you don't have to spend the entire 5 prior national championships from your other team sports. You can go for the lesser options. Again, you can sacrifice 1 national championship to see them go 12-0. You can sacrifice 2 national championships to see them win the SEC championship. 3 national championships to have the other 2 accomplishments as well as a Heisman Trophy for Lenore Sellers. 4 national championships to see them do all that and go all the way to the national championship game. Or you can sacrifice all 5, which are the 2 baseball national championships as well as the 3 women's basketball national championships to see them go undefeated, win the SEC, Sellers win the Heisman Trophy, and win the football national championship. Balls in your court again, 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse Subs text, and I'll get some of those texts to close out the hour. While we are speaking about national championships, I turn my attention now to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Again, the defending national champions of college football. Something we didn't think was possible in the end of November. Remember back to the game? It was happening at the same time as South Carolina and Clemson, but if you were like us, we were watching the game at O'Hara's in Lexington. We were watching South Carolina and Clemson, but kept glancing over because we couldn't believe what we were seeing. Michigan was hanging in there with Ohio State. Michigan beat Ohio State. Michigan caused the ruckus at midfield against Ohio State that led to the scuffle, if you want to call it that. And you remember that Ryan Day was like a zombie, right? He looked like he was lost and didn't look like he knew where he was. And we came away from that game saying there is no way Ohio State can win the national championship after that. Because that loss seemed to take the soul out of them. And once again, it was another year where Ryan Day could not get past Michigan. The prior years, it had been Jim Harbaugh there with a team that the year prior had obviously won the national championship. And it seemed like when he finally left and went back to the NFL and Sharon Moore took over, finally, okay, Ohio State's going to get things right again. They're going to beat that team up north and, reclaim the dominance of the rivalry. It didn't happen. Sharon Moore's essentially 500-ish squad was able to defeat Ohio State, though Ohio State, and maybe that was the catalyst. Maybe if they don't lose that game, they don't have the fire and drive to go on and win the national championship. But they did regardless, no matter if that was the driving, motivating factor or not, and surprised a lot of us. That loss, though, despite winning the entire national championship, still does not sit well with the players. Jeremiah Smith, who, let's be honest, might be the best player in all of college football this upcoming year, and darn well could win the Heisman Trophy himself, given what he did as a true freshman, was interviewed by The Athletic and talked about that Michigan loss. He said, and I quote, "I'm not a sore loser, but I hate losing. Losing to that team up north was pretty crazy. In the end, I think it really helped us play the way we did in the playoffs, but I didn't want to go Ohio State and lose to that team up north. I just hate them. Just something about them. For the next 2 years, I promise you, I will not lose to them. I can't lose to them in the next 2 years." Because, again, if you forget, Jeremiah Smith was a true freshman. He can't go to the NFL this year. Though, if he wanted to, he probably could still be a first-round pick, given how elite of a wide receiver he is. He's still got 2 more years, assuming he stays at Ohio State and doesn't transfer somewhere else. Can he beat Michigan in his time there? I tend to believe that he's right. I tend to think that the outlook for Ohio State and Michigan the next 2 years is that Ohio State is going to be the better squad in both those matchups. But again, I thought that last year going into the game. Ohio State was like a 3-touchdown favorite in that game a year ago and lost. Now, again, you can put on your tinfoil hats if you want to in this. I am a believer that Ohio State tried to win that game in a certain way, a certain physical, brutal type of way that Michigan was really good at the prior couple of years with Jim Harbaugh, and to prove a point, they tried to beat Michigan that way, and it backfired on them. So if Ohio State can just play their game this year, I think they'll probably win, but who knows? Again, I thought last year was a sure thing, and Ohio State fell on their face. So we'll see. But what if Jeremiah Smith is wrong? What if Jeremiah Smith never beats Michigan? What if Ryan Day, outside of that first year he did it back in 2019, what if Ryan Day never is able to beat that team up north again? How's he going to be viewed? How would he be viewed by fans if he can never beat their biggest rival? Probably poorly. And as we talked about, again, crazy, considering they won the national championship. We were talking about this guy being on the hot seat a year ago because he could not beat Michigan. But in today's world of college football, that doesn't derail you from winning the overall prize. And in fact, I posed this question. I went last night on the Ohio State Buckeyes Reddit page because, again, you have diehard fans there. And I posed the question, like, on the heels of what Jeremiah Smith had to say about Michigan, how would you view Ryan Day if he never beat the Wolverines again, but continue to win national championships? Let's just say he stays for another 10 years, wins 3 more natties, but that's 10 more losses to Michigan. And I'll be honest with you. The answers did surprise me a little bit because there's a split now, right? Where this used to be the end-all be-all. There used to be no matter what you did the rest of the year, whether you went 1-11 or 12-0, beating Michigan was the priority. And in a lot of ways, it tied into the structure of the prior BCS and the prior 14 playoff, where if you didn't win that game, there was usually no chance you were going to have to pursue a national championship. Yes, I know in 2022, they both still made the playoff. Both lost in the semifinal rounds, obviously, but that was the exception, not the rule. Typically, this game served as the eliminator on that side of the Big Ten to determine who's going to go play for the Big Ten championship and ultimately likely go play in the college football playoff. It's not the case anymore. And when I posed this question on the Reddit page, again, I got mixed results. One person said, well, I know a large segment of this sub, which is the subreddit, will call for his firing the day they lose, then claim they never said it the day after the Natty, a tradition like any other. A little bit more of a long-form answer gave me was, beating Michigan used to be a necessity for winning the national championship. It isn't anymore. That tells you, anyone that tells you that would rather beat Michigan than win a national championship has worms for brains. I'd rather go 6-5 and beat Michigan than lose to Michigan and win each and every other game but the Natty. Yes, but close doesn't mean anything. Winning it all means everything. This person noted the importance of winning goes in order: winning the national championship, winning the Michigan game, and winning the Big Ten. So these are people that are saying, no, there's a greater prize overall at the end of the day, that even as important as this game is, doesn't matter as much as it once used to. But there's people on the other side. Had another answer that said, will be an irreparable blemish on his record as a leader of the Buckeye boys. You have to beat the scum. You just have to. And then another person said, you can't be an all-time great if you lose to your rival each and every year, period. Despite, again, in this scenario, I'm saying they would win multiple national championships. But the perception is turning. Because for a long time, if you couldn't beat your rival, it didn't matter what else you did. The Michigan game was the end-all be-all. But we're starting to see this turn. And as time goes on, as we expand the playoff more to 14, 16, 24, 97, whatever it may be, the emphasis on how much these rivalries mean is quite frankly going to diminish. And I do hate that about college football now, because these games, especially in the last week of the regular season, used to be de facto eliminators. Think about South Carolina and Clemson. Carolina wins that game, thinking at the time that's helping their own chances for making the college football playoff while ending Clemson's. Well, that wasn't the case because Clemson won the ACC the next week, got in the playoff anyway, regardless of what happened against South Carolina. So I think we're teetering on something dangerous here, because as fun as it is to have more football to watch that means something in December, we are starting to lose a little bit of value in these championship games because they don't provide quite the stakes on a year-in, year-out basis that they used to. So, interesting look there from the Ohio State-Michigan perspective. given on the heels of what Jeremiah Smith had to say about that team up north. Again, I'm getting some of your thoughts on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100 of how much you'd be willing to sacrifice to see South Carolina win a football national championship. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head wrapping up hour number one here with you on your Wednesday on the game. Coming up at 10, it is Wednesday. We'll be talking some racing with Jen Jensen, recapping what was a very fun and exciting weekend at the Atlanta Motor Speedway that I got the fortune of being in attendance for. took my nephew to his first race, which was a lot of fun. We'll talk about that coming up at 10 o'clock as well. But looping back around to what I asked you earlier on in the hour, that in today's new era of revenue sharing in college sports, you may have to sacrifice things to see one program within your athletics be successful compared to the others. So I pose the question to you. If I gave you full control over the outcome of South Carolina's 2025 college football season, how successful do you want to see them be, and what are you willing to spend to get it? The currency in this instance being the national championships that baseball and women's basketball have won over the past 15 years. 5 options, obviously. And again, to run through, option number 1, which would cost you 1 national championship, a 12-0 regular season. Option number 2, which would cost you 2 national championships, winning the SEC championship game. Option number 3, and again, all these options as you go up include all the ones below it as well. Option number 3, get you a Lenore Sellers Heisman Trophy. Option number 4, includes an appearance in the national championship game. And option number 5, which would cost you all 5 of those national championships, would be to win it all. A perfect season, undefeated, SEC title, Sellers wins the Heisman Trophy, and you win the national championship, but it costs you all 5 of those prior national championships from the other sports. So 803-404-6100, interested to see what your thoughts on this are. Nameless Texture says, no way you give up the baseball trophies. They were the breakthrough. And for a lot of people that believed in the chicken curse, and the I thought it was funny, the In Spirit documentary that came out now a couple months ago on the SEC network made specific mention of the chicken curse and the gray cloud that it cast over South Carolina sports, and this thought that they could never break through and win a national championship. Well, baseball, in winning it in 2010, was able to do that. And obviously followed that up with another one a year later, and then women's basketball has done what they've done in the past decades since. So for a lot of people, they're not willing to part with that. And I agree. Or I see why you would come to that conclusion. And again, there's a lot of programs out there that would very quickly sell whatever other national championships they've won in other sports for football to win one overall. Because, again, football is just that much more important than what those other sports are. I don't think that's necessarily the case here at South Carolina. I don't think you would find the vast majority of people saying, yeah, I want to give up all the success of those other revenue-generating sports to some degree, smaller degree compared to football, but people aren't willing to give that up. And I think Nameless Texture there, it illustrates that point perfectly. Like, hey, that was the breakthrough. That's where the curse finally was put to rest. There's no way I'm willing to give that up, even if it meant South Carolina football won the entire thing. The other texture here says, all 5, all or nothing. I can see that point as well. Like, hey, if we're going to be sacrificing the accomplishments of prior teams, may as well go all in for the glory of one phenomenal, perfect college football season. And by the way, being perfect in today's world of college football, undefeated, seems like almost an impossible task, right? I think Steve Sarkisian brought it up a while back on some podcast or interview or something, where he said, I don't think we see undefeated national champions anymore. Ohio State last year had 2 losses, right? I certainly don't think anybody's surviving the SEC gauntlet undefeated this year. So if I were to give you that instance for South Carolina saying, hey, I guarantee you they're going to be able to win the entire thing and go undefeated in the process, that would be very, very rarefied air if they're able to do that. Yeah, none of the names text here says, I would give up every women's basketball championship and every baseball championship for one for football. Again, kind of agreeing with the last texter as well, saying, hey, if we're going to do this, let's go all in. And again, I bring this up as the point of, in the new revenue sharing era, you're going to have to make sacrifices. You may have to pull some from one sport to give to the other that could potentially affect how good that other sport can be with the resources you have available for them. Let's see. Easily give up the women's 3 national championships, but not baseball. So in that instance, if you're willing to give up 3, that would get you the 12-0 season, the SEC championship, and a Sellers Heisman Trophy. So you'd sacrifice all of the women's basketball championships for those accomplishments. And again, you've never won an SEC championship. You haven't had a Heisman Trophy winner in over 40 years. So Those would be significant accomplishments. And that's something that, for this texter, hey, I'm willing to give up the women's basketball success to see that come to fruition. And again, there's no wrong answer here. I'm not saying you're right, wrong, or indifferent. It's your own personal preference. For some people, those other sports may not be as important. For some people, what women's basketball is doing is putting Carolina on the map like no other sport ever has before. Or at least it hasn't since baseball was doing it back in the day. And you're not willing to give that up. So again, it's thought exercise more than anything else. And I appreciate you guys weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. That'll do it for hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Again, coming up, kickoff hour number 2, going to talk some racing with Jen Jensen, reflecting on what was a very, very exciting weekend at the Atlanta Motor Speedway and looking forward to her trip this weekend to the Chicago Street Race, maybe for the final time. We'll discuss that coming up next on the Extra Point here on the game. Tyred here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. I told you about them a little bit earlier on the hour, but I'm happy to remind you about them once again because it's not just crawl spaces they take care of. They take care of foundations too. So if you start to notice some things around your home that are a little bit off or a little bit peculiar, you need to get them checked out. Those things include cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed right so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Wednesday means it's time to talk some racing with Jen Jensen from the early game. And Jen, stop me if I'm being too prisoner of the moment because I was there. But what I witnessed on Saturday in Atlanta may have been one of the most compelling and entertaining races I've ever seen from start to finish.
And I was very excited about this segment because I was like, oh my gosh, Tyler was there live and in person. So where were you with regards to the big one?
Yeah, so we were sitting right at the first dog leg where the restart zone is. And when you sit, because we were kind of at the concourse level, there's really no bad seats at Atlanta now. Like you can see the entire track. And it's funny you ask about the big one, the one after the restart that took out, 17, 20 cars.
Correct.
I have my 11-year-old nephew with me and he's going to his first race. And, my dad and I tried the best to explain everything to him the day of leading up to the race. And I felt so bad because anytime something would happen on the track, we're both like just hitting him on the back, making sure he's looking in the right direction. And I think that was the one time because they just restarted and were still clumped up. He was looking right at it when it happened and he saw the entire thing unfold. But I remember I could see SVG get really low on the back stretch. And again, when you're kind of clumped up like that on the restart, I'm like, oh, something's about to happen. About the time I was going to say something to either him and my dad next to me, everything went sideways. Hamlin got turned, everybody got involved, and they came all, and really there's nowhere to go because Atlanta's so narrow now. You can't escape, and it just kind of funnels that way. And that took out a lot of really good cars, busted a lot of brackets for the in-season challenge.
My gosh, there are no perfect brackets. I mean, after the first week, insane.
But because, and I think NASCAR knew what they were doing when they laid it out this way. Because with Atlanta being a super speedway, again, typically most weeks when you ask to pick between Ty Dillon and Denny Hamlin every single time. But at a super speedway like this, those exact kind of things can happen. So I kind of figured there wouldn't be any left standing after that. And if there were, then that person is a freaking psychic.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. When I saw it, because I had Hamlin, so it's like that took me out. But I've seen a lot of complaints like, okay, super speedway the first week,
it's gotta be hard. Like it can't be an easy thing if you're, especially if you're putting up $1 million for some lucky fan if they can get it right. It's gotta be a challenge. And again, better luck next year to everybody, I guess.
Right. It's like, okay, so what are you going to talk about the challenge for the rest of the,
And there's still a driver competing for $1 million. So
true. Very true.
That's part of it. And, I didn't get to go back and watch the entire race broadcast. I watched about the last 50 laps and, they were bringing it up a lot, which I guess can be expected for their first race doing this, but I feel like that'll taper off a little bit, especially once we get down to the final couple going for it, where it won't be the dominant storyline throughout the entire race. Like I feel like they were really kind of trying to convey on Saturday.
I would agree with that. But it certainly, it was a fun idea, and what's funny is to see Denny Hamlin, who was it was really kind of his idea, and and he's out, or at least the bracket.
But getting back to the race as a whole, and I've been going to races my entire life. I went to Talladega in the mid 2000s in the heyday of super speedway racing, and every race I've ever been to has a lull at some point, right? Where everybody just kind of riding around, buying their time, saving tires, saving fuel, whatever it may be. And that didn't happen here. Literally for 400 miles, they were on the chip the entire time. I lost count at how many lead changes I saw going into turn number one. They raced the entire night. And it was a long night. The entire race took about 4 hours with red flags to complete, but it felt like it was just going by so fast. In one of the last restarts, I'd gone to the bathroom during the caution, and I'm washing my hands as I can hear them pulling up to the restart zone to restart. And I'm feverishly going as fast as I can because I don't want to miss anything. Because again, the entire race was just entertainment from start to finish.
The one thing I did see Denny Hamlin talking about was he said he actually thinks it was better for the race or for racing if with half the field being cleared out, because he said with everything being so narrow, he said we can't really do our job when we're all bunched up. You can't be doing all these things. You can't really be doing good passing. You can't. He said the way it was after a bunch of cars went out, then the whole point was you get somebody who's a lap down, well, they probably can make up their lap. If there was somebody that fell back to 20th, they could get back up in the top 5. And he said he just feels like that was a good thing in Atlanta.
And that's something I noticed too watching the race, because typically, at Daytona or Talladega, if you have a big wreck like that takes out, half the field in the first stage, it's like, well, now you don't have as many cars that can form a bigger draft, and that can hurt the racing at tracks like that because of how important the draft is for everyone. But in Atlanta, it's kind of that in between where the draft's important, but you can also do a lot of things on your own. And I agree. I think it did spread things out a little bit where you can maneuver through the pack. And God, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Carson Hocevar, those guys were able to weave their way through. I don't know how Stenhouse got up competing for the lead in the last handful of laps, but boom, there he was.
Yeah. He's one I can't figure out. It seems like he stays in rides. He just manages to get up front sometimes. It's just almost like he's just kind of a lucky guy that eventually will just kind of matriculate to get to where he needs to be.
Yeah, it was a fun race to be at, minus the little brief sprinkling that happened that stopped them for a few minutes. But all things considered, fun night. I recommend to anyone, if you've not been to the new version of Atlanta, go. I think it's the best ticket in the sport right now. And again, I was thoroughly entertained for 3.5, 4 hours straight.
And what a great time to get your nephew in to see a race. I mean, that of all places to break him in. Man.
Exactly. And I think, and I noticed as well, a lot of young people at this race. And,
really?
We go to Darlington, I've been to Daytona in the past couple of years, and there's always a fair amount of young people there, but I just felt like there was more this time. And maybe that's conducive to the fact that it's more of an entertaining style of racing, but that's the next generation that's going to be watching the sport for 30, 40, 50 years. Like, it's good to see that. And it's not just people there, it's people wearing the merch, wearing the t-shirts, and you hear them talking about the race and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's still a lot of interest from that younger crowd, which is a very positive thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to see more of the younger fans, and I like when different drivers will recognize them or take a flag hand a flag over the stands or whatever. And I loved Chase Elliott was working with the Children's Hospital, CHOA, Children's Hospital of Atlanta, and had a special kid in the pits with him. I love seeing more family-oriented things. You're seeing more of that too with some of the drivers. You keep seeing as their families grow and all of that, and I just think that encourages family atmosphere and more kids to watch the sport.
Speaking of Chase Elliott, I don't think TV did it justice. It was very loud there. Anytime he was battling for the lead, and especially when he won the race with the last lap pass on Keselowski, it was a, dare I say, like a college football type of atmosphere a race, which is something that you just don't see a whole lot.
Well, home field advantage for him for sure, and that's and how fun. He just got a dog. His mom gave him a dog. What, Blitz? I think is his name.
I think so.
And it's a Doberman, and it was kind of cool to see that side of him too, where the dog was there, very well behaved. So it even felt like definitely a home track for him, but I'm not surprised that the crowd was loud.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the little girl that designed his car from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. She got to go celebrate on the front stretch with him, with her whole family. Like, that is just
cool.
So cool to see, and again, reminds you of what impact the sport can have. And that's special memory for sure for her and for a lot of people. But again, regardless of who won the race, it's just fun to watch, and that's what you want at the end of the day, is a fun race to watch. And again, this year's had its ups and downs, but that might be race of the year. I don't know when it's all said and done, but that certainly sets a bar pretty high.
Yep. And I think also you need, after everybody's brackets were busted, I think you needed a really solid race that will keep people happy and think, oh, okay, the contest, whatever, move on. But we have good racing.
Well, you're heading up to Chicago for this weekend's race, and we'll get to that in a moment. A little bit of news that came out yesterday, though, that in reference to Daniel Suarez, who is not going to be returning to Trackhouse in 2026. Yeah, it's an interesting choice because, again, he was with the team since the beginning in 2021. But I pulled up some numbers here. When you look at the stats between him and Chastain, since Chastain joined the team in 22, Chastain's beaten him in every category. overall wins, top 5s, top 10s, overall, points finished at the end of the year. Chastain made the Final Four back with the Hail Melon back in 2022. He's consistently outperforming him. Obviously, SVG is a threat every single time you go to a road course. Connor Zilic is somebody that is obviously creating a lot of buzz for what he's doing, and just it seems like Suarez is falling behind a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, getting the race win in Mexico, that some of that helped him there, but not enough to.
And that wasn't on the Cup side, so that has no bearing on what Trackhouse is doing.
Yeah, true.
I mean, he's going to land somewhere. He's got sponsors that follow him. He's got a good following. Like, he'll end up somewhere. I'm more intrigued to see, like, okay, does this mean Zilic is going Cup racing at 19 years old? Does this mean that, I don't know, do you go grab a Corey Heim who can't seem to move his way up because he doesn't have, family money? Like where does Trackhouse go with this? I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I am too. And there is plenty of talent out there that they could pull from, and that's the thing. There's not enough seats really for the talent that's available. So I'm curious, and I'm curious like when that decision will be made and when that announcement will be made.
Definitely so. Well, like I said, you're going to Chicago this weekend for the 3rd edition of the Chicago Street Race. Let's hope it does not rain this time, because that has been the bummer the prior 2 times. I feel like it has not allowed the event to be at its full potential because rain has been such a hindrance.
Yeah, and I think even for prepping for the race and the engineers trying to figure out what to do, they haven't had a full race that they really have been able to go to and look at the notebook and say, okay, yeah, this is what we did here, this is what we did here, this is how the tires were, because they've always had, at least 60% wet conditions. So, and I believe it is going to be the last street race, at least for a while. It sure looks that way. So it's like, I sure hope they can not have it, but I have the ponchos packed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. Is it kind of seems like the common thought is, into the contract, maybe go to Chicagoland next year, maybe you bring this back sometime down the road. But nevertheless, regardless if this is last year or not, what an experiment! Like, what bold move that NASCAR made to do something that was unfathomable 10 years ago. And again, rain and all things considered, it's been a success. Like, it's got a lot of people that otherwise would have never paid attention to the sport. When you plop it right in front of their face in the middle of the city, they have no choice but to do that. And I think it's generated a lot of interest.
I do too. And a lot of the activities, outside of the race, concerts, and again, just so many fan activities. I would talk to a couple people who were first time, never been to a race before, and had such a good time, and they were turning into fans quickly because of the experience that they had. So it never is a bad thing. Yeah.
Well, again, hopefully the rain stays away and you guys can have a good time. Where's your vantage point going to be this time?
I believe our tickets actually had changed a little bit, but I think between 2 and 3. I need to check that. Yeah, I was putting that on my husband to decide where to go. So usually I kind of control all that, and so he said, "I'll show you." But
well, hopefully you guys get a good vantage point, and we'll treat you a good race this weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So look forward to talking about that next week, and I'm talking about yet another road course in Sonoma the week after that.
I know. It's each week. It's the season is ticking off.
Well, we'll discuss that next week. Appreciate it as always, Jen.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
She's Jen Jensen from the Early Game, talking racing with me each and every Wednesday. We'll have more of the Extra Point coming up next, right after this.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrod along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Again, only 60 days until South Carolina tees things off against Virginia Tech in week number 1 in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta on August 31st, as we'll finally start to learn a little bit about this team, because this is an off season that's been odd from the standpoint of how many unknowns we have, right? And we try and talk about this team as much as we can in terms of what we think are absolutes, what we think are guarantees. But it's kind of a short list, right? We know Sellers is good. We know Sellers has the ability to make players around him better. We know Dylan Stewart is very good. We know Dylan Stewart is going to be forced to be reckoned with coming off the edge for South Carolina. That's kind of it. We have an idea of what Rasul Faison, assuming he's eligible, can be. We have an idea of what Braden Cisse can be in the secondary, but we don't know for sure, because for a large sense, the rest of this team is unproven at Carolina, whether it be guys that have been here but not played a whole lot, or guys that have transferred in, and most of those guys don't have a ton of stats and tape to fall back on in terms of raising whatever level of expectation we have for them. And kind of focusing on the defense here, it's going to be interesting to see, and I think this is where people get hung up the most when it comes to predictions for Carolina is, well, how good can the defense be in 2025? Again, this time last year, we were talking about the historic defense, right? That was, I forget who the first player was to give it that tab, but that's kind of the name that it took on, this historic defense. That's what they were going for. That's what they're shooting for, to be a defense unlike anything this school had ever seen, which was a pretty high bar to set. Debo Williams talked about the donuts, right? Oh, gotta make every game a donut. Can't allow any points. And while they didn't have any shutout games, they certainly had some pretty impressive defensive performances throughout the season. And when you look at the overall numbers, they allowed under 20 points per game. So South Carolina ended up 5th in the SEC, allowing 18.1 points per game last year, which was their best mark in terms of points allowed in over a decade, right? So you're talking about having to go back to the Clowney era defenses to find numbers that rival that. So you check that box in that regard. And again, when you look at the fact that South Carolina had 5 players drafted on this defense and a good handful of others getting opportunities with NFL teams, undrafted free agents, rookie camp invites, all those kind of things, it makes sense as to why the team was as good and successful as they were on the defensive side of the football. Now you expect a drop-off, but how much becomes the question. Phil Steele, who put out his preview magazine just a couple days ago, listed South Carolina as a team that is expected to regress quite a bit, in his opinion, when it comes to points allowed. So he has his most improved teams list. So the higher on this list you are, the more improved you're going to be in this area. The lower on the list, the less improved you'll be in this area. And when it comes to most improved on defensive points, Texas Tech, who has hit the portal harder than anybody, it seems like, this offseason, is number 1. But at the very bottom of the list, you find South Carolina, 133rd. For reference, now that Delaware and Missouri State have joined FBS, there's now 136 teams competing at this level. So he's saying South Carolina is 4th from the bottom when it comes to, or 3rd from the bottom, when it comes to points allowed in terms of your reference point from a year ago. That doesn't mean that South Carolina is going to score or allow the 133rd most points in FBS this year. It just means they expect a significant regression from a season ago. So that can mean you go from allowing 18 points a game to suddenly 26 or something along those lines. And when you think about it, they're probably going to regress to some degree. How much is the question? I hope it's not severe. I hope it's not what Phil Steele is essentially pointing out here. And Phil Steele is not the highest on the Gamecocks in terms of what his expectations are for this upcoming year compared to some other national pundits. And a big catalyst for that seems to revolve around the defense. And I'm not saying I disagree with, I agree with that necessarily, but I understand where you're coming from. Because again, when you look at how many high-level talents were lost to the draft after last year, you question, okay, how can they be in that same realm this upcoming year? And again, kind of running through the defense here, when it comes to sure things, you know what you got in Dylan Stewart. You have a pretty good idea of what Brandon Cisse is going to be. You have a small idea of what, like, Brian Thomas Jr. can be. JT Gear can be. Those guys coming off the edge, but they have not taken on the role that's expected of them this year. Because, again, with Kennard going off to the NFL, one of our biggest questions of this entire team is who occupies that other edge spot. Yeah, Dylan Stewart's going to be on one side, but who's that other guy? Who's coming off the other edge, putting pressure on quarterbacks? Commanding maybe double teams that allow Dylan Stewart to run freer. Or when Dylan Stewart's getting double teamed, who can kind of pick up the slack when it comes to the other side of the edge and getting pressure on quarterbacks, making tackles in the backfield, the whole 9 yards. The middle of the defense. Again, the strongest individual unit on this team last year seemed to be the linebacker room with veteran guys. Ben Martin Scott been around here forever. Debo Williams been around forever. Demetrius Knight played a lot of college football and came in here and balled out in year number 1. Now you move to a Jaron Willis, who's been around, but not a ton of playtime. You get J.R. Johnson, who's kind of thought to be the leader of that room in terms of expectations. Sean Murphy, Okoronkwo, guys like that we'll have to see how good they can be. You got a ton of freshmen coming in. Who knows? It's a big question right now. I'm kind of throwing names at the wall, see what sticks. I think Yuva put out his 2 deep the other day, and he featured like J.R. Johnson, Fred Johnson, whatever you want to call him, and Sean Murphy in terms of kind of expected guys in the middle of that defense, which makes a lot of sense. And that's fine if those are your starters. How good can they be? Can they match the level that your middle of the defense did a year ago? I don't know. That's going to be hard to top, especially given all the experience those guys had in terms of, cleaning up the things that maybe got through the front of the line of scrimmage, dropping into coverage, those kind of things. Can you still have that same caliber of expectation in the middle of the defense that, helps everybody else out? We'll have to see. And then the secondary. Now, the secondary was helped out tremendously last year by the pass rush that you had with Kennard and Stewart, because guess what? When quarterbacks are under pressure, they don't have as much time to throw. That means receivers don't have as much time to run and get open and go through their routes and all those kind of things. So, again, that helps out your secondary. So what happens on the back end? Again, you've got returners in DQ Smith. You've got returners in Jalen Kilgore. But what happens with Cisse, Judge Collier, a Miles Norwood? How does he factor in? Like, a lot of questions still to be answered. And can that unit be as good as it was a year ago, minus a guy that, again, nearly went to be a first-rounder in Nicky Minwari? You're missing O'Donnell Fortune now, who'd been here for a couple of years. Like, you're resetting in a lot of ways in the secondary. And talking about turnovers, which, again, a lot of those are generated by the secondary, this team, this defense, with Clayton White and Shane Beamer, seems to really live and die when it comes to turnovers. Let's go back 2 years ago. They went 0 for October in 2023. During that time, didn't generate a single turnover. You see direct correlation between how good they can be overall and how many turnovers they're generating. When you're getting after the quarterbacks, when you're staying in close proximity when it comes to these receivers running routes, when you're able to get some of those 50-50 balls, that leads to success for Carolina defenses. And how good can you be at ball hawking, taking the ball away this upcoming season? That could potentially be the catalyst for how good your defense as a whole can be. Again, I'm throwing out these hypotheticals because we don't know as of right now. We're not going to know until the season gets rolling coming up here in 60 days. And obviously, fingers are crossed, hope for the best, and hoping this defense, maybe not as good as it was a year ago, but somewhere in that same realm to where it can complement what we hope is going to be a really good offense as well. So we'll have to see. Again, 6 days to kickoff, but that's Phil Steele's thoughts, at least, on how much he thinks this defense can regress when it comes to total points allowed. Palm 5 Mom's talking about quarterbacks, specifically one quarterback that's already kind of taken the college football world by storm. We'll talk about some of the best and which ones South Carolina is going to see this upcoming season. That is coming up next. It is the Extra Point. It's our head along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrod along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. We'll get into what Paul Feinbaum had to say here in just a moment. But first, it is time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. And today's candidate is everybody that filled out a bracket for the NASCAR In-Season Challenge. You heard Jen and I talking about it a little bit earlier on in the hour. The first ever In-Season Challenge, which offered fans a potential $1 million prize if you got the bracket right. Well, after Saturday night's race in Atlanta, 0 perfect brackets remain. Not a single person is still standing after the chaotic race at Atlanta. So Who Sprung a Leak is everybody's bracket when it came to the first ever NASCAR In-Season Challenge. Better luck next year. I really think this is harder to fill out than the NCAA tournament bracket, considering all the variables in a race with 40 cars every single week. So there's your Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. Paul Feinbaum has been beating the drum for Arch Manning this entire offseason. He's perhaps been beating that drum more than anybody else. And once again yesterday on Get Up, Paul Feinbaum made the proclamation of just how good he thinks Arch Manning's going to be this year.
The absolute roof. I think there's a reasonably good chance that Arch Manning will be sitting on the front row in New York at the Heisman ceremony. That's assuming that his team does what it's supposed to do and compete for not only the SEC, but for the national championship. And I really believe they will. I think Steve Sarkisian, who's one of the most amazing play callers I've ever seen, made a critical mistake late in the year. He was way too loyal to Quinn Ewers, who was banged up and was really ineffective. Had Arch Manning been instituted in the second half of that game, like Nick Saban did a couple of years ago with Tagovailoa, I think there's a reasonably good chance that Texas would have beaten Ohio State and won the national championship. They're very capable of doing it again this year. I believe also that Arch Manning is the best college football quarterback we have seen since Tim Tebow entered the scene in 2006.
I love Paul Feinbaum. And he does give he knows more about the SEC than all of us put together, and has forgotten more about football than some of us will ever truly know. But I do think as he's getting onto more of these national platforms with shows like Get Up, I do think sometimes he says things that he does not necessarily believe, but something that he knows will spurn conversation, like what he just said yesterday when it comes to Arch Manning. You know, he mentions the Ohio State game and kind of views it through the lens of, well, if he just did what Saban did with Tua replacing Jalen Hurts in the 2018 national championship game, then, you have a different outcome. Texas wins the game, maybe goes on to win the national championship themselves. But he fails to mention that there was actually kind of that scenario earlier on in the season when Texas at home was playing Georgia and got down 20-0 right before halftime. He got 2 drives. Arch Manning came out and led the Texas offense for 2 drives. One was a 3-and-out, and one was a fumble that resulted in Georgia getting more points before halftime. That was his chance. That was his Tua Tagovailoa moment to take over the Texas offense, and he didn't do it. And then the reins went back to Ewers, and he never surrendered them for the rest of the season en route to coming up short in that semifinal game. So it's not like Arch Manning hasn't gotten his chance. He has. He's just not been able to seize the moment quite yet. And again, Paul Feinbaum's been banging the drum for Arch Manning perhaps louder than anybody has. And again, so much of this stems from who he is, right? His last name, his family, and all that, which I certainly get. But in a weird way, the hype around Arch Manning, who got a couple starts last year, but none against quality competition, so we still haven't seen his full potential, which, hey, we're going to find out real quick because they play Ohio State in the Horseshoe on week number 1. We're going to see just how good Arch Manning is right off the jump. The conversation and attention that Arch Manning has got this year as the perceived best quarterback in college football has kind of cast a shadow on who exactly is the best returning quarterback in the sport this upcoming year. Because, again, Arch Manning's like on the short list for Heisman and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of quality quarterbacks returning for another year at their respective schools. I'm going to let EA Sports College Football 26 help us out with this conversation because they released yesterday their top 20 quarterback rankings. And at the top of the list, a couple guys that South Carolina is going to see this year, Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, along with Drew Aller, tied at 92, the best overall rating for quarterbacks in this edition of the game. And when you think about it, if I had to think of a group of quarterbacks that could probably be considered at the top in terms of returning starters, yeah, that makes sense. Those guys would probably be towards the top of my list, if not at the very, very top of it. When you look at short list for the Heisman Trophy, all three of these guys featured on it. When you look at first-round draft picks next year, projection-wise, all three of these guys are featured on it. Can you split hairs on them and say one's better than the other two? I don't know. I would, and don't get upset by saying this, I may lean towards Cade Klubnik because of the jump we saw from year 2 to year number 3 in terms of what he actually accomplished. He cut down on his turnovers. He got much better at throwing the ball down the field and scored a lot more touchdowns from 2023 to 2024. So if you're telling me that, okay, he can improve even more, then who knows what those numbers could be. For Garrett Nussmeier, we only have 1 year of a sample size, so we don't have progress from 1 year to the other. We also have progress when it comes to Drew Aller, too. He got a lot better throwing the ball downfield. That was kind of his Achilles heel back in 2023. And all three of these guys have a lot of talent around them on their offense to help them out. So, again, maybe you don't separate any of them definitively as the number 1 overall returning quarterback. Maybe it's 1A, 1B, and 1C. And I think you have to throw Sellers in that conversation too, right? And by the way, EA Sports College Football has him tied for 4th alongside Sam Levitt, as well as John Mateer and Carson Beck in terms of overall rating at 91. And I think you can also make a stronger case for Lenore Sellers given the fact that he was working with a lot less around him compared to some of these other quarterbacks, a season ago at their respective schools, because South Carolina didn't have elite wide receiver play. You had good moments. Again, Harvard came along when Jared Brown wasn't hurt. He was good. Mazio Bennett certainly popped at the beginning of the year, but he was mainly throwing to Josh Simon, a tight end, right? Which is less than ideal when you hopefully have a group of good receivers around you. Again, safety net, and it worked out well, but you'd like to primarily have a wide receiver option that you can rely on that, again, Sellers didn't have, but some of these other guys did. So you can make a case that maybe Sellers is the best overall returning quarterback. When it comes to his upside potential, his high ceiling, and Todd McShay said this on his podcast a couple weeks ago when we played the clip on here, ceiling-wise, he may be better than everybody else in terms of what he could potentially accomplish. And again, there's fine-tuning things and specifics that he's going to be working on this offseason with Mike Shula, his offensive coordinator, in terms of getting the footwork better, progressing things down the field and all that kind of stuff to make him a more well-rounded quarterback. And if he nails that, he can be unstoppable, right? And he may, given, again, the questions around him on this team, have to put this team on his back in a lot of ways and carry them to whatever success they're going to have. We'll have to see. But it doesn't seem like, and again, Arch Manning garners so much of the conversation because of who he is and his potential as well, but I don't think there's a clear-cut runaway number 1. This is the best quarterback returning in college football this year. A lot of guys in the conversation, right? Sam Levitt, again, led Arizona State to the college football playoff and darn near to the semifinals. Now, Cam Scatterbo helped out a lot, but Sam Levitt was a very solid quarterback. John Mateer, who's being touted as the next Cam Ward, coming over from WASU to Oklahoma, is being looked at as the savior of that program in terms of quarterback play. We'll see if he can live up to that. Carson Beck, obviously last year wasn't great at Georgia. But the thought is, assuming he comes back healthy, that he can get back to his old ways and be good once again at Miami. So we'll see. Again, there's no definitive breakout. Yes, this guy's better than everybody else quarterback this year, which I think makes the Heisman Trophy race interesting. Does Arch Manning get the benefit of the doubt because of who he is and his name? Sure. But I don't think that should award him the trophy. Now, if he has the numbers to back it up, sure. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a wide open race. And again, kind of going back to what I said a little bit earlier about the defense for South Carolina and the questions that it has, I just listed off 3 quarterbacks in these, and again, these are just rankings by College Football 26, but if that's the perception of who the better quarterbacks are going to be in college football this year, South Carolina takes on 3 of the top 6 in Klubnik, Nussmeier, and Mateer in 3 of the biggest games of the entire year for South Carolina. I position that Oklahoma game could be maybe the biggest game of the year, considering its implications, and it's in the middle of that swing month that is the month of October. You're going to have to deal with another good quarterback in John Mateer in the process of that. So it's going to be interesting to see, but an interesting year when it comes to quarterbacks returning and who we think of as the best in college football this season. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. An American hero returning to his respective sport coming up on Friday, as well as patriotic team names. Who's the best, in my opinion? I'll tell you that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on The Game, wrapping up our Number 2, programming note, we will not be here tomorrow and Friday in celebration of the July 4th holiday. And then when we come back on Monday, July the 7th, things can be shaken up a little bit. The early game will now feature Elijah Campbell alongside Preston Thorne and Jen Jensen. Also, Bill Gunner will join me for the afternoon show, halftime show, from 12 until 3. And Terry Ford and Jay Phillips going to be hosting the halftime or the postgame show from 3 until 6. A little bit of a lineup shift around here. We do this every couple of years, and that's what's going to get rolling starting on Monday. But on Friday, July the 4th, of course, the day we celebrate the nation's independence. 249 years, by the way. Next year is the 250-year anniversary of America being founded. And in celebration a year early, I guess, Joey Chestnut making his return to the nation's famous hot dog eating contest coming up on Friday. Of course, last year he missed the contest after there was a controversy involving his deal with Impossible Foods, which Nathan's viewed as a competitor, and banned him from the event. Well, about 1 million less people watched the event last year, so they certainly worked their way into getting Joey Chestnut back for this year to where, no surprise, he is the huge favorite at minus 2,500 to win the entire thing, eat a lot of hot dogs, and restore the glory of the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest, which I'm a big fan of this, watch it every single year, and can't wait to see Joey Chestnut back in the fold coming up on Friday. In celebration of the July 4th holiday, I thought I would compile my list of what I think are the top 5 most patriotic sports teams' names out there. And this goes across college, goes across professional sports, all levels. I've compiled my list, my opinion. If you have a different opinion, that's fine. This is what I believe. I'm going to go 5-1 here. The number 5 slot, you have the Washington Capitals of the NHL. You obviously have the name of the capital city of America in Washington and the name that supports it, saying, hey, it's the capital. I feel like that is perfect. They obviously have the red, white, and blue scheme, which I think lines up perfectly. Now, you can say, okay, wouldn't the Washington Nationals be almost the same thing, given the fact that it's the nation's capital and they're in Washington? Yes, you are right with the name. However, the Washington Nationals did originate in Montreal as the Expos, so I do have to deduct points for that. So Capitals come in at number 5 for me. The New England Patriots coming in at the number 4 spot. You have a key location in the Revolution, the Boston area, all of greater New England, obviously, but we really kind of associate the Patriots with being a Boston sports team. And the name of the soldiers, the Patriots that fought for the nation's independence. Boom, perfect name there, New England Patriots coming in at number 4. Number 3, the Philadelphia 76ers. You have the year of the founding of this great country in 1776. You also have the city in which the most important document in the history of this nation, the Declaration of Independence, was signed. And I love the script of the Philadelphia when it comes to the 76ers and how they incorporate so much of the revolutionary time into a lot of their scheme, their logos, and all that kind of stuff, where they really lean into it. And again, reference to 1776 and the Declaration of Independence being signed there at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. So those are my 5 through 3. Again, Washington Capitals at number 5, New England Patriots at number 4, and the Philadelphia 76ers at number 3. The top 2 may be something you don't normally think of, but I did a little bit of digging here because I felt like these needed to be represented. At number 2, I have the George Washington University Revolutionaries. Your school is named after the father of our country, and you have the name, much like the Patriots, of the people that he helped lead in the fight for freedom. Revolutionaries. I know they were originally called the Colonials up until a couple years ago, but I think Revolutionaries does the same kind of job. Again, fighting the Revolutionary War, fighting for the freedom of our country. George Washington Revolutionaries, phenomenal name. However, it is outdone by one team and one team only. The American University Eagles. Is there not a more perfect and patriotic name than American University Eagles? You have literally the name of the country, America, as well as the national symbol of freedom, the bald eagle. The American Eagles, not the clothing brand, the university that you see pop up in the NCAA tournament sometimes, but otherwise you may not really think about. But it's right there in the D.C. area, and I think is probably the most appropriately named when it comes to the school itself, as well as the respective mascot. So there's my quick top 5 of most patriotic sports teams names out there as of right now. Washington Capitals at number 5, New England Patriots at number 4, Philadelphia 76ers at number 3, George Washington Revolutionaries at number 2, and the American University Eagles at number 1. So just a quick thought as we get set to celebrate the nation's independence coming up on Friday. And if you're like me, you'll be tuning in for the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest, seeing Joey Chestnut return to glory and likely win another mustard yellow belt after missing the competition 1 year ago. We'll talk more 4th of July coming up in the next hour, as well as the latest on Noah Clark as he gets set to make his commitment, hopefully to South Carolina, coming up at the noon hour as well. That's all coming up next in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday here on The Game. 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris. Along with you here on the game. Our last show for this week will be off tomorrow and Friday for the July 4th holiday. Get back in coming up next week. And, man, we'll be well under 60 days until kickoff then, and full steam ahead to the season starting. A lot of things to get to. We'll get to Noah Clark coming up here in a couple minutes. But I do have to ask, anybody spot Spencer Rattler around Columbia in the past couple days? Anybody aware of his presence in town here?
On social media.
Yeah,
I saw.
Social media.
Didn't spot him with my own eyes. In town doing a little camp.
Our own Jen Jensen boarding her flight to Atlanta. She's heading up to Chicago for the street race up there. Hopped on the flight with Spencer Rattler. She said he was kind of incognito going through security and all that kind of stuff, sunglasses, hat. He, once he got on the plane, did reveal some Saints gear, though. So I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Spencer Rattler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was here. He was in town was that over the weekend, or was that like
No, it was
beginning
yesterday.
of the week? Yesterday.
Okay.
Golly, time flies. Yeah, yesterday doing a camp for the youth. Rocking some Saints gear there.
Sure.
Giving some praise to Lenore Sellers.
Cool.
So, yeah, Spencer, I think, Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, still has a place here in Columbia. He's described it as home away from home, so he likes to come back every now and then, give back, which is cool.
He made that point, leading up to the draft process and reflecting on his time here at Carolina that, he was so embraced by this community and felt, so beloved in his 2 years here that, it wasn't just a stop along the way to getting to the NFL. Like, he really embraced this place. And again, it sounds like he is sticking around here to some degree, condo or whatever he has, and cool to see him coming back for a camp and getting back to the community and all that kind of stuff. Because, again, in the transfer portal era, guys kind of see transferring to new places as a necessary step to get them wherever they're going to go and may not necessarily have connections to that place. So neat to see that Spencer Rattler, embraced Columbia the way he did and still wants to be a part of it, even, playing at the next level like he is now.
Yeah, you don't always see that with transfer guys. And, for a lot of the transfer guys, it is a little bit more almost like their professional career. Like, hey, this is a place I need to go, and they have what I'm looking for, and let's just go for a year or two, and that's that. And then you see other transfer guys who really are able to ingrain themselves in the sort of culture of a place, the history of a place, and Spencer, I think certainly bought in and got a new kind of lease on his athletic life here at South Carolina. And, yeah, pretty sweet to see him. I think that thing was actually on campus, the camp was. So very, very cool stuff. Still has a following here, lots of fans here. And, good marketing there, too, to come back to Columbia and do that.
Well, and the Saints quarterback competition wide open with Derek Carr retiring this offseason. They did draft Tyler Shuck out of Louisville, but certainly has an opportunity to make an impact this upcoming season. We'll certainly keep an eye on that as the NFL season does fast approach. 60 days until kickoff. Time for another trivia question back to the 1960 season. By the way, West still leading as of right now with a score of 10.5 over Chris's 7.5 as we navigate closer and closer to the start of the season. Today's trivia question is, in 1960, South Carolina won 3 games. How many of those games came against schools in the state of North Carolina?
You're reusing the format of some questions already, Tyler?
Am I not allowed to do that?
It's your contest.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
There's not a lot of substance from the 1960 season, so I'm doing what I can.
Again, your decision.
My decision.
You could do like who wore number 60, or you could do something, more
Sure.
reasonable.
I could.
Who was the best 60 of all time?
Chris White. Let's go.
Sure.
Center in the Holtz area.
If you want me to,
Chester.
if you want me to start
Grad, I
incorporating
think.
numbers into these questions, like, hey,
No,
who
thanks.
wore
I don't
number
like any of them.
who wore number 59 in 2014? I could do that too. If you guys think you can get in on
Maybe
that.
That'd be kind of fun,
Maybe
actually.
some of them.
Okay, I'll work that in. I can do that.
It's
How-
going to backfire.
How many of the wins were from schools in the state of North
State
Carolina?
of North Carolina. Yep.
How many wins against schools from the state of North Carolina?
That is correct. That is the question.
I'm going to say all 3. Trying to read Tyler's body language.
Yeah. No, well, he didn't do the, you sure? Are you sure?
Waiting on Chris's answer.
Benefits of going first.
Yep.
I do know South Carolina.
You could have gone first.
South Carolina tied NC State that year.
Oh, you did some research this
8-8.
time.
Then you also would have had Duke and Duke, who won the ACC that year.
Look at Chris.
You would have had Duke and North Carolina. God, who else was on the schedule, though? I'm worried they're going to sneak a school win on me. I'm going to say... we'll say 0.
You don't think any of those wins came against North Carolina schools?
Right.
Well, neither of you got it right. It was 2. North Carolina and Wake Forest. But you were correct. They did tie NC State 8-8.
Should have gone with that. The first thing that came to my mind was to do the $1 bob and say 2. But I didn't do it. I lost.
Just missed out.
Can I have a quarter point for knowing the NC State score?
I do have somewhat of a bonus point here, half a point. Do you know how many years it was until they beat more than 2 teams from the state of North Carolina in a single season?
No.
We can prices right this. You can guess.
I will guess 9. I'll say they did it in 1969 when they won the ACC.
All right, 9. What's your guess?
Oh, you had some thought behind that. I was thinking it'd be like a big number. I'd say like 30 years.
72.
30 years? That's your guess?
Yeah.
Okay, 9's actually the correct answer, 1969. Boom, half point. You've closed the gap now down to 2.5.
That's not very encouraging, but
hey,
oh well.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
Gaining ground. Yeah, some of these years a little bit harder to get questions out of, but I will start incorporating numbers into this. I think we can have some fun with who was what number during what year.
Yeah, I think I'm going to regret complaining about the current.
You guys asked for it.
Yeah,
well, we'll see. Coming up here in like 53 minutes. You can watch it on 3, by the way. Noah Clark going to be announcing his commitment. We'll see if it's to South Carolina or not. First question: the announcement starts at 12. How long till he actually says where he's going? We got an estimate on how long the prerequisites of who's going to speak beforehand before he actually puts on a hat and says where he's going.
This would be a good over/under. I feel like.
Yeah.
I will say this: he's not going to break the all-time record that was set by Lenore Sellers for fastest commitment.
How long was that?
About 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, we know Sellers isn't a long talker anyway.
To the table and just say,
I was there to live stream and almost missed the thing.
People are logging on like, what happened?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say this is a pretty efficient one.
Yes.
I don't think there's going to be any drama to it. But you do still have to account for maybe head coach wants to talk, maybe AD wants to talk. I don't think Noah will say a ton. I'm going to set... And you know what, guys? It's going to be run by on 3, so there's a little bit of structure to this thing.
Okay.
I'm going to set... I don't think we're looking at a long wait. I'm going to say 10 minutes or less.
So we're going to have somebody behind the camera giving like the, come on, let's go. Hurry up.
Play the music.
If things start getting too drawn out.
Off the stage. No, I mean, that's a good point. Like when Wes and I go cover, a commitment announcement that's not like actually live streamed by a recruiting service. Like we just show up to cover it and say we're going to live stream it. Like, they don't care. They take as long as they want, which is fine, by the way, obviously.
Sure.
But if you are doing it with On 3 or 24/7, whatever, there is a little bit more structure to this thing. If you do your commitment on ESPN or during the Under Armour All-American game, you're not going to have everybody come up there and say a few words. So.
Well, and this, it is the middle of July. It is open to whoever wants to come. It seems like at a school up there in in Durham. But again, it's not the school assembly that you get for some of these guys during the school year, where the principal talks, the math teacher talks. Coach, assistant coach, whatever. Like it's not the pep rally type of thing. This is formally for this one announcement.
I'm going 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Yep. So West and I generally agree.
Should we award a point to whoever's the closest for guessing how long it's going to take?
No.
No.
I was going to say no because Wes had a non-specific answer. He said 10 minutes or less. You got to pick a number. But I agree. No point. I award you no points.
So 10 minutes or less, but 7 minutes for you.
Yep, that's right.
I think that's fair.
What's yours?
I'll go 8, just to go in the middle.
Okay.
We'll dive into the specifics of Noah Clark and what this commitment could mean for South Carolina if that comes to fruition right about an hour from now. Coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday here on the game.
All right, guys out there, if you're struggling with some negative symptoms like fatigue, if you put on some weight, can't really figure out why, if you're losing your muscle, go check out our friends over at Game Day Men's Health. Dennis and the crew do an amazing job. I've been out there to visit them to check out what the clinic looks like. They have same-day appointments available for fast, convenient care. They specialize in TRT, that's testosterone replacement therapy, can help boost your energy and strength. And they don't just want to do it for you if you're not a great candidate. They're going to give you in-house testing with their in-house lab. You can get results in about 15 minutes and do a consultation with their knowledgeable team out there in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and Two Notch Road. GameDayMen'sHealth.com for more information or give them a call, 803-265-3161. Personalized treatment plans from licensed providers at Game Day Men's Health.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here on your Wednesday on the game.
Good song choice, Tyler.
Thank you. Again, Noah Clark, the four-star defensive tackle out of North Carolina, set to announce his decision coming up at the top of the hour, which will be streamed by On3 as South Carolina looks to add to what is already a very, very strong class for 2026. But he's narrowed his list down to Carolina, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. But when you look at all the offers that he held over his recruiting process, teams like Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Michigan, all in the process at some point wanting his services. How did we get this list dwindled down to Carolina, NC State, and the two Virginia schools?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to speak for Noah on this, but when you look at the official visits and, typically when you have some of those just massive name schools involved, but then they don't make the final list, I mean, frankly, Noah's probably making this list based on who is recruiting him the hardest and who is making him feel wanted. And, those were all legitimate offers, but ultimately it comes down to what schools are, making you a priority. And certainly South Carolina has prioritized him. I look at that group, Chris. To me, NC State was kind of the other school that I always thought, well, if Noah were to end up there, that really wouldn't be too much of a surprise to me. They obviously are right there, local school for him, have prioritized him a lot. And, I could have easily seen it just being one of those things where he's like, I got everything I need right here. But ultimately, he'll make that decision today. Still feel good about where South Carolina is. I know everybody's a little bit, gun-shy right now about everything.
Walking on eggshells, for sure.
Yeah. I don't, and again, I will caveat everything we ever say about recruiting now. You truly never know. A kid can wake up and change his mind morning of, right? But at least where things are right now, we have not heard, at least with PJ Dean, it didn't go the way Carolina fans wanted, but at least you had a little primer of all right, this thing is very close, very tight, back and forth. It's a little different than, hey, I think we're getting this guy, and boom, he's not going to South Carolina. With Noah, it would be somewhat surprising to me if South Carolina does not get good news on Noah Clark in actually less than an hour here, Chris.
I would say, Wes, I'll take it a step further. I'd be shocked. It's like, the P.J. Dean thing the other day, you knew it was going down to the wire. Nothing would have been a shock there one way or another. This one is one that is a different type of situation. You can't compare almost any recruitment. You can say this recruitment reminds me of that recruitment, but really they all stand on their own. And this is one where, Noah Clark, Carolina offered him, I think, in 2023, late 2023, still has the offer pinned to his Twitter profile. They were immediately a big factor, and both sides have stayed really consistent with one another. I think he's been to South Carolina, if not more than anywhere else, close. We've got 8 visits logged in our On3/Rivals database right now, and it's possible we missed 1 or 2 of those, right? So he's been to campus a bunch. He took his OV in June, last month, was back, came up on his own, to hang out again while South Carolina was having a camp, just to observe, watch some of his teammates, support them. And so just a really, really high comfort level. And I think you felt pretty good about it going into the official visit, but after that, it seemed to really go to the next level, and you just felt like that this is looking like a match.
Yeah, for sure, man. I believe I'm actually going to steal your you pointing out the thing about how he's had the offer pinned. I feel like that would be a great lead for a commit story, potentially. Playing off of that a little bit, So, let's go ahead. We're obviously no show for us tomorrow or Friday. Let's go ahead and get in a little bit, man, to what this would mean for South Carolina, assuming he does pick the Gamecocks. And, Chris, I do think it's a little bit interesting because of that lingering sting of missing on P.J. Dean. People kind of had in their minds, hey, this class could be Aiden Harris, P.J. Dean, Noah Clark in terms of defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen, right? And you were going, man, that is a stout high school defensive tackle class. And again, like nobody's tried to sugarcoat it. Like, yes, South Carolina wanted P.J. Dean. He was a priority. In recruiting, sometimes a guy just picks another school, especially when it's tight down the stretch like that. But I think there is a little bit of I don't know if it's irony or not. I missed that day in English class, but it is a little bit interesting. If you just like zoomed out, or you went back a year ago and then said fast forward to today, South Carolina has 2 4-star defensive tackles. That's going to be their high school class at that position. You'd be like, man, that's a pretty good cycle for Travian Robertson. Like, that's what they needed. They needed kind of a couple of foundational guys. So if it does end up being Aiden Harris and Noah Clark, the P.J. Dean loss this week is a little bit overshadowing what otherwise would have been a reason for excitement with South Carolina fans, I think.
Yeah. Well, and not only 2 defensive tackles who are 4-star guys, but from North Carolina. I mean, how long has that been a talking point in Gamecock country? And of course, they broke that streak. But remember, there was a long period of time, couple cycles, I think, where South Carolina didn't sign a player from North Carolina. Nick Barrett in the 2021 class for a long time was the one. And then last year, I think it was the 2025 cycle. Maybe it's a little bit before that. They broke through eventually is the point and started getting some guys. And then they've had more success there in that state. And I think there's several reasons for that, but it's something that's been on Carolina's fans' radar. Now, perception doesn't ultimately win you football games. Whether or not, where guys come from doesn't really lend you it's about getting good players. But if you've got quality linemen, which the Carolinas typically do, South Carolina, North Carolina, those are guys that you're going to want to go recruit and you're going to want to get. And so, notwithstanding the loss of P.J. Dean recently, they are in position to land 2 4-star defensive tackles from North Carolina, which is great for multiple reasons. And they're 2 different types of guys. Aiden Harris, attacking 3-technique type defensive tackle, Noah Clark, space eater type. If you've seen this guy in person, he is massive. I mean, he's listed at 6'4.5", 350. I believe every bit of that.
Yeah, I think that's an important note, man. Assuming it's these 2, they are completely different players. And I think that's a good thing in this case if you're kind of looking ahead. And again, in recruiting, you never know how guys are going to turn out. But you do like to maybe have a little bit of, it's not written in pen, but at least in pencil, like, all right, if everybody kind of works out, maybe this guy slots at this position, that guy slots. Still defensive tackle, but one of them is that guy that's, like Chris said, eating space. He's depending on what front you're in, he's a nose tackle, he's a 0 or a 1, and you're more of a gap control guy. And then I think you look at Aiden, like we've talked about when he committed, he is certainly more along that mold of your Tonka Hemingway, your TJ Sanders. Like, this is a guy who may not play over 290 pounds, and I think you're okay with that. You want to keep that quick twitch. You want to keep that ability to beat guards, into the gap with quickness and using your hands and all those things. And so, you look back, certainly Carolina has had to take a few guys on the defensive line on the interior that aren't as highly rated as these 2. So I think looking at this class just in terms of who you got, assuming, if Carolina gets Noah Clark later today, would you have loved to have P.J. Dean? Of course, but it's still a pretty big positive. And I think they're going to keep recruiting P.J. Dean. We'll see if the door gets cracked there or not.
And assuming you get Clark today and you hang on to Harris, both those guys sign here on early signing day coming up in December. From a depth standpoint, does that put South Carolina on track where it needs to be when it comes to the defensive tackle room? Because, again, last year you lost so many guys from that group to the NFL running out of eligibility and all that. And obviously you have Goodwine and Barrett coming back. And I'm assuming both those guys are on their last year of eligibility here. Don't quote me on that. But you got a lot of bodies in the room. Does bringing in these 2 guys, if those are the only 2 defensive tackles you sign, put you where you need to be from a depth standpoint going forward?
Yeah, I think you're still going to look to the portal to supplement if you bring in 2 guys there. And, that's also a position I don't ever count on freshmen. Like, they can impact as true freshmen, but I don't think you ever count on it unless it's a guy that's just so off the page good that you're just like, hey, this guy's going to see the field, right? And, so for me, I look at it like, all right, you're kind of starting to kind of build the foundation of that room. You hope that a couple of these freshmen you brought in from this past class can maybe get on the field just enough, keep their red shirt, but build a little bit of, of course, get some experience. One of the advantages South Carolina liked with Troy Pikes coming in is that, Troy still has several years of eligibility left. So the hope would be to get him in the rotation this year and, keep him going and get him ready for next year. And then I would think if these are your two guys, then I still think you're going to be looking heavily at, hey, what's in the portal at defensive tackle this coming off season. I just don't think you're going to be looking at it saying, hey, you're going to have to take 2 or 3 guys necessarily. It may be more, hey, is there a starter type we can go get? Is there a depth type to add to? You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's going to be as huge of a priority as it probably was this past offseason.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to get in a spot where you're relying on going into a cycle saying, all right, if we don't get a couple guys and a couple starter caliber guys from the portal, we're in trouble here, right? And so you saw that like last offseason, Carolina brought in a couple freshmen who are now on campus, Caleb Williams, Christian Ingram, but they also hit the portal, right? They went out and got Devontae Miles, they got Brownlow Dindy, they got Troy Pikes, Zay Hardy as a junior college guy. So they'll probably land on a mix. I think getting these 2 freshmen, at least these 2 freshmen, that certainly helps your numbers and your long-term development. But I do think as they have done in the Shane Beamer era, you will see some supplementation through the portal.
Again, that announcement coming up at the top of the hour, which you can watch on 3's live stream. See if Noah Clark does commit to South Carolina. While we're on the topic of high school recruiting, it may be taking on even bigger importance in this new era of revenue sharing. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Wednesday on the game.
All right, folks, you know it. This show brought to you by our friends over at Firehouse Subs every single day. Check them out today for the new Smokin' Barbecue Triple Stack, 2 versions of it. The classic, which we tried and had last year, and then the new Carolina Gold, which features a same sandwich but just a different barbecue sauce. And if you're here in the Midlands, of course, you're used to that mustard-based barbecue sauce, but outstanding sandwich for you to try if you've not tried it already. It's got that slow smoked beef brisket, smoked turkey breast, Virginia honey ham, melted cheddar cheese, slaw, whatever else you want to customize it with as well. It is a great sandwich. Looking forward to trying the new Carolina Gold one as well. You can try it yourself or get all of your Firehouse Subs favorites by going to firehousesubs.com. Or do what we do, download the Firehouse Subs app, save your favorites, get points with every single time you order, and then get free food next time. Check them out today. Check them out right now, Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. It's Our West Chris with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. We didn't get a chance to get into this yesterday, but yesterday was July 1st, where we officially entered the revenue sharing era. As after the House settlement, revenue sharing is officially a thing now, and the schools will begin paying players directly in most of the major sports going forward out of that $20.5 million budget. Of course, NIL still very much going to be a thing, as we've talked about plenty of times in the past. But as we enter this new era that does have direct payments from the players to the players via the school, I've seen a lot of people bring up that high school recruiting, it kind of rises in prominence once again. Not that it ever wasn't important, but a lot of schools have relied on the portal in a lot of ways these past couple of years to build their rosters. Again, Deion Sanders flipped his roster multiple times, mainly via the portal, and didn't seem to put as much into high school recruiting as a lot of the schools around the country. Shane Beamer in South Carolina have done a really good job of keeping the high school stuff priority, which I think will benefit them going forward in this new era. But from your guys' standpoint, when you kind of look at how things are going to be done going forward, where, again, every player is guaranteed to make something from the school with revenue sharing, how does that change, and does that put more importance on high school recruiting that maybe it hadn't been in the past couple of years for a lot of schools?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. I think sometimes this stuff plays out the way people expect it to. Other times it doesn't. Frankly, I feel like, Chris, I hear more and more right now about schools offering, reportedly offering, or you hear they are offering amounts to guys, and in some cases, high school players, that I'm going, how does that fit with the framework of revenue share? And so before I can kind of align like what rev share is going to actually mean for teams' approach, I want to know, like, are schools actually even operating under rev share rules, or are they just operating that, oh, this is going to work, like this is going to be kicked into the sun soon anyway, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
no, I do.
Like, I'm just sitting there. No, I agree with the premise, but some of the high school guys, because of what I'm talking about, they're wanting the big money deals too.
Yeah, no, I mean, the athletes are certainly not looking at it saying, and agents may say, like, that they have an understanding that maybe some of the offers are going to go down. I think that's speculative to say. Are they going to start asking for less? Absolutely not. And I think athletes and their families, a lot of them have representatives nowadays. I don't think those conversations center around, hey, guys, now it's the rev share era. These numbers are going to go down. Like, it's a different conversation than what's going on with some administrators who are,
sure,
I think, hoping more than anything that these numbers are going to go down. But I think, to your point, Wes, how are schools approaching it? I heard an example the other day of a highly touted recruit who's got some great options on the table, and one of the offers that I believe is probably the most significant of the offers from a name brand school is here's the offer, here's the number. We don't know, we being the offering school, we don't know how it's going to be split yet. Because one question that an agent or a family might have is, okay, how do I know this money's guaranteed, right? And so is it coming fully out of rev share? Is it coming fully out of above the cap? Is there a split? And I think schools are trying to figure that out because you've got this pressure to be able to be very competitive while also thinking about, okay, if I give a kid, a freshman who's never played a snap, and I tell him $500,000, just for example,
yeah,
$500,000 to come play here, if I take that $500,000 out of my rev share bucket, that leaves X amount for the entire rest of my team, including star players, seniors, juniors, all
sure,
that, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes tough. So schools are definitely still thinking about above the cap revenues, and there are questions about how you get there.
And that's kind of my thing in bringing up this point. And yes, sure, the star players like Bryce Underwood, who's kind of the prime example when it comes to the deal that he got for Michigan, despite having never playing a snap there, those guys are still probably going to command quite a bit coming out of high school, going into the college ranks. But your, I don't want to say run-of-the-mill prospects, because I don't want to put guys down like that, but your, lesser-known prospects, guys that don't, jump off the page quite as much, you may not have to pay, again, $200,000 to get a interior offensive lineman that may not be starting for you for another 2 years or something like that, because they're going to be getting something guaranteed no matter what through revenue sharing. That's kind of the things that I think are potentially changing with this, where not every single high school prospect is going to command something NIL-wise to come and commit to your school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's where parity becomes something that becomes maybe even more in play here, because, all right, if I'm at South Carolina, let's take your random guard you're talking about, 3-star guy. I may say, you know what, we like this kid a lot. There's some development to go, but we believe there's upside here. Probably not going to start for 2 or 3 years. We can't really commit much to him. Well, a school that's a little bit, let's take another Power 4 school, but it's maybe a little bit more down the line, or let's take a school, let's say you have a huge need on the offensive line, and you're going, man, we're going to have to stretch it out a little bit here. We're going to have to reach a little bit here. South Carolina may say, we're willing to commit this amount. Well, School B may say, no, we actually need that guy, so we're going to commit a little bit more. So I think in some ways that is, in theory, how the talent will get spread out a little bit more. Now, you do the counterpoint to that, the argument against that is you still see, look at P.J. Dean in Georgia. Georgia's going to take 100 defensive tackles in the last 2 classes, and they're still just out there recruiting guys. So, right. That argument does not, I'll speak against myself, the argument does not completely hold up. But we have seen that in some instances where a guy that South Carolina would have taken in a prior era, when it was just, hey, you get a scholarship, you're getting a scholarship offer from one school, you get a scholarship offer from the other school. That's what the offer is. Now it's scholarship offer plus what is the financial commitment.
Yeah, and I think, too, you have to think about, let's give a South Carolina specific zoom into this. Let's take a couple things that have been talked about a lot. So let's talk like running back recruiting, right?
Yep.
Specifically with high school and at South Carolina. So we all know, and this is just the reality, South Carolina is not Georgia right now. They're not Ohio State, okay? Some of those schools, they can get, I think you could call it discount rates on guys. Maybe they're not the highest NIL offer. They don't have to be. So if you're South Carolina, you don't want to get guys, and Shane Beamer's talked about this a lot, you don't want to get guys because you're the highest NIL offer. But you are building a program, so you have to kind of find the right kind of guys. So, for instance, been a lot of talk about landing a high school running back. I guarantee you, South Carolina in this class and other classes, they could have overcommitted themselves from an NIL standpoint and gotten a high school back to check the box of having Gamecock Central right. They got a high school running back who's a 4-star or whatever. But if you have to play that game at this point, is it the right kind of guy? Is he going to transfer after a year before he's barely played, right? So I think you got to take it case by case and even school by school. And you do have to have, whether you're a big name brand school or you're a school that's trying to be on the rise like South Carolina, you've got to have some strategy behind these things. You have to make strategic decisions. I mean, we've heard of, heck, Georgia and other name brand schools pulling out of recruitments because they're like, that offer's too high. That doesn't make sense for us.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of strategy that has to go into all of this.
Yeah, it's truly the new era. Again, we kind of, I don't think you're going to understand the full potential and unintended consequences to a degree as well until we get a lot further down the road, with this. Again, first year, Games aren't going to be played for another 60 days, and we'll see what happens from there. But truly a time that we, for a while, didn't think we'd ever get to in college sports when it came to school or athletes being paid directly by the schools. But we're here, and we'll see how it unfolds over the next couple of years, if there's another era on the horizon after this one here in a couple of years as well. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. A quick start bench cut, 4th of July edition, as we wrap up today's show on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you here on your Wednesday. Again, final show for this week, as we'll be off tomorrow and Friday for the 4th of July holiday. Be back in on Monday. That's also the same day that the lineup gets shuffled around here at the game. This show will stay the same. Still all three of us from 11 to 12. But Elijah jumping into the early game, Bill joining me on the halftime show, and Terry and Jay reuniting for the postgame show will be the new lineup going forward starting on Monday. As we look ahead to Friday and the 4th of July, got a quick little start bench cut here. How do we feel about fireworks? Yes, no, excited, staple of the 4th of July, something you light yourself? How do we feel about
In
them?
favor? Yes.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, big firework fan? It's okay.
Yeah, pyro.
Start bench cut. Bottle rockets, firecrackers, and Roman candles. What are you going with?
I really thought this was going to involve food, which is what I was here for.
I feel like we typically do food for this, so I switched it up. We can talk about food too, but give me your start bench
Come
cut
up
of
with a secondary one, too.
yeah, fireworks.
Okay, I mean, mine's pretty easy. Well, I said it was easy.
Is it easy?
So the cut is definitely firecrackers.
Okay,
You know, don't do much for me. They're just loud.
sure.
Most fireworks are loud. If you're going to set something off, you might as well have a little bit more of a visual effect.
Okay,
You know, I do appreciate firecrackers. You know, you got the scene in Home Alone where he
Sure.
puts them in the can or whatever and sets them off. That's hilarious. So, you know, I appreciate them. Low barrier of entry. You know,
Yeah.
set off some firecrackers pretty easy.
So we have what? Firecrackers, Roman
Roman candles, and bottle rockets.
Roman candles and bottle rockets, you hear too many instances, and let me be clear on the radio, I'm not advocating for this. People would shoot them at each other growing up.
We've all done it.
Do not do that, kids.
If you like your fingers, don't do that.
I actually am not a huge fan of either. Would not be my preference, but I would start a Roman candle and I would bench a bottle rocket.
Now, are you like at 4th of July events, are you lighting fireworks or just watching them? Somebody else doing
I'll
that?
do either. I mean, I'll go give a helping hand.
Okay.
Last year,
Not literally giving your hand,
Yeah,
like
sure,
Jason
well,
Pierre-Paul.
at a friend's house last year, somebody brought. I mean, they brought some good. You know, sometimes you'll go somewhere and they're like, "Oh, y'all got some good
That
ones."
guy that has the good stuff.
This guy in my
Yeah.
neighborhood puts on a show. But last year we were at somebody else's house. They had some good stuff. I lit a few.
Okay.
You know, I like the big, the mortars.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
those
the big
are fun.
ball. You drop them into the thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a bomb going off.
Yes. And
What-
you get the visual effect. You know.
Yeah.
It's more impressive than the others.
All right, Wes, start bench cut.
Can I just cut them all?
You don't like any of them?
I mean, so I'll start bottle rockets just because they're cool. But I'm here for just the show, like not the in the backyard, like full on like commercialism, capital. Like I'm going to the company or whatever, or the organization that has spent $50,000 on just the like it's gonna look like the scene from The Sandlot, basically.
Sure.
So that's what I'm here for. I don't have to light anything. I don't have to get shot by anything. I just have to sit back and watch
Okay.
the full-on show
From a distance.
Yeah.
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 So you don't like getting a little bit up close and
No,
personal.
I did when I was like younger, but now I feel like it's just like, all right, light this, cool.
Well, and then there's
It's like, all
there's
right,
the
it's over.
cleanup too, because if
There's
you're
$100.
if you're
Yeah,
lighting
yeah.
it in your backyard, well, guess what? Somebody's got to pick all that stuff up the next day.
Yeah, like some of
So-
these public shows are
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, they got
these
artillery
days.
type things back there that they're
I mean,
shooting
the
off.
one, I don't know if y'all have ever been out to the one they have at Lake Murray. I mean, it's incredible. They do it at 2 different islands, so you can see, you know, wherever you are. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It syncs up to the radio, you know.
Nice.
It's amazing.
I'll agree. I'm probably cutting firecrackers again.
Yeah.
Cool novelty, noise.
Way cooler
but
when you're a kid, I feel
sure.
like.
Yeah. Once you've done it once or twice, you're like, it doesn't give me a whole lot. The Roman candles are fun when you're being irresponsible. I'd probably put them on the bench, but yeah, bottle rockets. Just as far as the presentation goes, you can't really beat that because again, that's the visual in the sky that we all think of when it comes to fireworks.
Yeah. Now, I would also cut, like, here's another one, guys. Sparklers. I mean, the kids.
Well, there's
They
an age
line up.
limit for sparklers, right?
Yeah, they think they're awesome, but for
'Cause
parents,
you're
they're
running around with fire.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me take this stick, and then it burns down to the metal, and
Yep.
they're like, oh, it's hot. Yeah, don't hold it until the very end.
You guys ever have poppets?
Yeah, I was going to say the
Yeah,
poppets.
those were kind of fun throwing at people back in the day.
Yeah, very loud.
Or putting them under someone's shoe and they step on them?
Yeah. But I cut both of those.
What about the
I'm a mortars guy now.
what about the snakes? Did you ever do those? The little snakes that like
Yep.
unwind. That's cool for like 3 seconds.
The snakes, they had the tank. Like you lit the tank and it moved a little bit.
I don't think I
and
ever had one of
exploded.
those.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fireworks fan. I will watch. I will participate.
The state of South Carolina has always sold fireworks. Growing up in Georgia, like bottle rockets and stuff were not allowed to be sold. You had to go out of state to get those.
Wow,
So-
I kind of thought Georgia would be all in on the
No.
blowing stuff up.
Every year we had to drive across the state line to like, exit 1 or whatever to get fireworks.
But you could bring them back across.
You could bring them back
weren't,
across.
Like, illegally smuggling.
It was a very loosely enforced law, but like, the only like actual fireworks you could buy in the state were like the multi-packs you bought at Walmart that you had to sit on the ground and light that were
Meanwhile, here
nothing.
it's like
Oh yeah.
it's like you're like that trailer for the fireworks is pretty close to that gas pump.
Yeah.
It's like
No,
really close.
the state line of South Carolina and Alabama were must-go-tos every summer to get your fill of fireworks before 4th of July got here. And then you stock up for New Year as well. You just buy a ton.
Well, I hope everybody is careful with their fireworks this year.
Yes, please.
That's all I gotta say.
Count your digits. Keep them.
Yeah.
Tyler, I know it would have been easier to have like the fireworks stand right down the road, but wasn't there a little bit of like excitement to?
Absolutely.
Oh, we're going across the state line to.
Feel like you're
to
doing
go.
something.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
a little bit of hey, I'm doing something I'm not
little
supposed
intrigue.
to do. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. It was fun, and now they're legal in Georgia, so that fun's not quite the same as it used to be. But we'll be back on Monday. Everybody enjoy the 4th of July holiday and enjoy the weekend as well. It's been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.